Hello and welcome to another edition of Only in Illinois, your weekly video recap from Reboot, Illinois. I'm Madeline Dubeck here with Matt Dietrich, back from Springfield and Inauguration Week. And right out of the box already, Governor Bruce Rauner has had a couple of press conferences to sign executive orders. And you noticed last week that the former governor, Pat Quinn, was not in attendance at his inaugural swearing-in ceremony.
He was not at the inaugural, but he was there in spirit in a couple of the press conferences that newly inaugurated Governor Rauner held last week. The purpose of those was, of course, to undo just about everything that Governor Quinn did in his last few weeks in office. So Pat Quinn had signed quite a few executive orders, had done some board appointments, had made some hires. Governor Rauner quickly issued executive orders that undid all of those.
So one of the things that occurred to me is that by the time he was on his way out the door, Governor Quinn didn't do some kind of standard gracious sorts of things like concede defeat when it was apparent to the rest of us that he had lost, congratulate the gentleman who beat him. He handed out a few nice plum jobs for his campaign aides on his way out the door. As you said, he tried to push through a bunch of other appointments. And so he really left a pretty strong impression at the end that he had kind of become the consummate insider, even though he's spent most of his life trying to portray himself as the outsider, champion of the little guys. And
as you pointed out in a blog post this week, there was quite a bit that Governor Rauner could take from that. You know, when you say Governor Quinn tried to portray himself as the outsider, it really wasn't a portrayal early on. He really was the outsider when he spearheaded the cutback amendment that shrank the size of the Illinois House.
Right.
He led a protest to send tea bags to the governor.
He was Tea Party before Tea Party was cool.
Right. So what is Governor Rauner, what can he learn from what he's just seen in his predecessor?
Well, and I think the thing, a lot of people out there think of Pat Quinn and Bruce Rauner as completely opposite, but they're actually not, because Bruce Rauner ran as an outsider who was going to come in and shake up Springfield, which is not all that different from what Pat Quinn told us he was going to do for all of his decades in the public limelight. And so what we saw was Pat Quinn trying to balance being the outsider and the governor at the same time, and didn't always pull it off very successfully. And so I think there's a lesson there for Bruce Rauner, which is that's a very tricky and difficult thing to do, and Bruce Rauner's off to a strong start with these executive orders right off the bat, encouraging transparency and instituting a revolving door ban on people who work in the executive branch of government. But it's the long view that will be important, and we'll have to wait and see how that goes. And he's gonna, I'm sure he knows, we're not telling him anything new here, but he knows the road ahead's going to get a whole lot trickier when it comes to the budget. And we had a report this week also that the deficit in the state of Illinois by next fiscal year will be nearly double what we had all anticipated, to $9 billion.
Right, and Governor Rauner came into office anticipating big problems, and he said that the current state budget was booby-trapped to set us up for a really bad year in 2016, but the report that we got from the University of Illinois, from the Institute of Government and Public Affairs, said it's going to be a lot worse. $9 billion is not a number that anyone else was anticipating, and IGPA has a pretty good record for being a, very well researched and not a completely alarmist voice or biased in any way.
Or partisan. So there's a kind of a booby trap there that Governor Rauner may have set himself up to step in when it comes to school funding, for
Right.
example.
Because he ran his entire campaign talking about how Pat Quinn had cut school funding, which, you know, school funding did go down somewhat. There was a lot that went into that, and it was never an issue of Pat Quinn slashing education money in the budget. Part of it had to do with some stimulus money that went away. But now Governor Rauner has his chairman of the State Board of Education, Reverend James Meeks, and the first action from the State Board of Ed this week has been to request an additional $730 million for education funding. And this is in line with what's happened for several years in a row now. The
Sure.
State Board of Ed always asks for several $100 million because there is a baseline of per student spending that has been established by the legislature, and we never get there. And we always want to get there. Now we want to have pre-K. There's a lot of great ambition out there for education in Illinois.
Right.
And I think Governor Rauner now, as he puts the budget together, and he's going to have this request that basically all the request is saying is, Governor, follow up on what you said you were going to do in the campaign. You said you were going to increase education spending. Let's see it. So this will be fascinating and difficult.
All at the same time, and there's a big hole for all of us to dig out of with Governor Rauner, so we'll see how this all plays out in the weeks and months ahead. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next edition of Only in Illinois.